Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Steve Adubato. This has got to be, you have to be one of the most fascinating people I've ever spoken to. People are going to find out in a second. She is Melina Macall. She is the co-founder of the United Tastes of America and Syria Supper Club, which is?
Which is an organization that sprang from one event, which my partner Kate McCaffrey and I set up in response to the xenophobic and Islamophobic rhetoric we were hearing in the area.
But there's a food connection here, because you were saying right before we got in the air, you talked about food justice. There's a whole bunch of food issues. What do food issues have to do with Syrian refugees, et cetera?
Well, rather than the food issues, it's the power of food to bring people together. We all eat. It's a nice common ground at which to meet people. And we wanted to bring people together and create connections and show support of our, at that point initially, our Muslim neighbors, to show that there were people in New Jersey specifically who did not agree with then Governor, well, he still is our governor, but Governor Christie's.
As we do this program, yes.
Yes, comment in November of 2015 that no Syrian refugees could come to the state. We wanted to respond, and we wanted to respond in a positive way. So we brought people together. Our very first event, we didn't know it was our first event, we thought it was an event, was a Christmas Day meal, a traditional Jewish Christmas Day meal of Chinese takeout with Jews and Muslims in a synagogue, and in fact the broader community as well.
What was it like?
Fantastic.
What made it so great?
The thing that makes all of our events great was first shown there, which is people's wanting to show a hand of friendship. And so people were just wanting to be there. There was a tremendous atmosphere of warmth. We work with trust all the time. So as it turned out, we ended up with 10 recently resettled Syrian families, and their first foray into New Jersey was coming to a synagogue. And that was a big leap of faith for them. And we had people who gave up their Christmas, who do celebrate Christmas, and they said, we want to be here and show solidarity. And so that atmosphere as the underscoring background to the evening made everything else magnificent. Whether the food was magnificent or not, it didn't really matter. It tasted great. I guess it's like manna in the desert. It's what you want it to be. You
know, it's so interesting. In my family, it's largely Italian food around holidays, and we try to avoid speaking about politics because it never goes well. But apparently when you get together, you talk about all kinds of things like?
We do, but we also encourage people to not leap straight in and expect a resettled family to tell their backstory. In the same way that you wouldn't go to a party and ask somebody who you hadn't met before but had heard they had gone through something traumatic like a divorce or a terrible illness. You wouldn't say, hi, I'm Steve. I hear you've had a bad divorce. Tell me all about it.
Or a loss of a loved one. You wouldn't do it.
You just wouldn't do it. So, so we tend to encourage people to find the connecting points of conversation. And food is not only a great way to come together, but also a great conversation starter. So our Syrian cooks prepare the food, and it's their food, so they're preparing it with great love and with a positive cultural background that comes in the food. And then our American guests who are at the table, when they're sitting and conversing, a great starting point is something that they're eating. They can ask about
excuse me
it.
for interrupting. Where do you find people on all sides for this?
So,
by the way, do we put up the information, Jen, so people can find out more? Go ahead.
So for on the Syrian side of things, and right now we're working primarily with Syrians, but we do have a couple of Iraqi cooks and an Afghani cook as well. It started with that event I told you about two Christmases ago, where we had these 10 recently resettled families. And we started visiting them, and every time we visited them, they fed us. And my partner Kate and I were rapidly expanding and decided we needed somebody else to eat the food too. But we also saw this as a great opportunity for our new neighbors to sit at the table as equals and to be actively involved in determining their future in a positive way. So we invited them to prepare the food. And we started with the people we knew, and word spread in the community. We started with, we knew 10, and we now have over 50 cooks.
Where do you do it? Excuse me for interrupting. Where do you do it now? Where are the events?
The events are held in people's homes. We were very deliberate about that because we wanted to create that intimacy and that feeling of safety and comfort that a home brings. So we'll have an American host who opens up their home for it. And then the Syrians who bring in the food, they're kind of hosts as well because they're providing the food. So we all sit together. But we've expanded beyond that. We do corporate events often for staff or for staff and families. And even though those are much larger, we still manage to retain that feeling of intimacy and connection and connectivity, partly how we open the evening with an introduction and a little talk. And people get together and they mix. We bring in an interpreter, but we also encourage people to use their phones. Google Translate is we call it our frenemy because you never quite know what it's saying.
No, it's not always exactly the right translation.
It's not always remotely what you thought you were saying, so there's another leap of faith there.
Let me do this. I'm curious about this. Your healthy obsession with food and the power of food. It's really, as you said, the power of food. Give me the most concise response you can to this question. What is the power of food in bringing people together, particularly when you're dealing with Syrian refugees and the misconceptions around it? Loaded question, I know.
It enables us to personalize the impersonal. So my perception, for example, of the Syrian refugee crisis could have been what I see on the TV, on media, what I read in the newspaper, the terrible photos, the tragedy, and so on. But I have no real sense of that being a person. Then I have somebody sitting next to me who has made some delicious food.
At dinner.
And we're having dinner together. And I can ask about the food. And maybe she will choose to share that she used to make this with her sisters back home. And I'll get a sense of that. Or she'll talk about her kids, or maybe her daughter helped her, or maybe her husband is the official taster, something like that. And suddenly it's not this impersonal concept of a refugee. It is a real person who maybe had the same background, had things that were similar to me in their past life. Maybe they didn't, but we do have points of connection, and food is one of them.
Last question. The future of your organization, which is doing so much to help so many. Go ahead.
So we started with our one-off event, and from that we then had 2 dinners, which we thought was going to be it. In our first year of the dinners, we've had over 250 events, fed over 2,500 guests, and now have over 50 cooks, all raring to go. We are in the process of incorporating as a 501c3.
A not-for-profit organization.
A non-profit organization. And we are planning to have a commercial kitchen, bring the cooks in there, set up professional training, incorporate English as a second language in the workplace so that you have the context of where you're learning, so you actually are able to learn. And just from this, not necessarily create employment for everybody who is working with us, but create the confidence and the dignity, a dignified path to them being self-sufficient and being contributors to our society.
You are making, excuse me, a very big difference, a significant difference. We thank you for everything you're doing to bring people together around the power of food. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
This is One-on-One. We'll be right back. Thank you very much.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the CAUCUS Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Russell Berry Foundation, Montclair State University, New Jersey Resources, MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey, New Jersey Sharing Network, the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., and by New Jersey State Nurses Association and the Institute for Nursing. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios.